Well, good evening. I am Dr. Michael Anthony Stevens, Senior Pastor at the City Church in Huntersville, North Carolina. And I want to say welcome tonight to Volume 1 of Black Men Talk. This is an impromptu, organic, raw, rogue, but very real-time conversation about black men, from black men, for black men. But we want to extend this tonight to not just the black man on Facebook Live, on YouTube Live, and for those who will watch this archive video in the seasons to come. We want to talk to the entire family, the entire community, and the entire nation. I want to start by saying thank you for joining us online tonight. We appreciate you taking time out of your very busy schedules on a Wednesday night to join us. What we'd like to do is that tonight we want to be as real, as raw as possible, hopefully to not just talk about issues, but to talk about solutions, to talk about answers. We want to go from peaceful protest to policy. You know, where is the school? Where is the church? Where is the community? Where's the nucleus of the black family? And all of these discussions. I'm honored tonight and joined by some very distinguished African-American leading men in our community, in our nation. I'll introduce them in one moment, but before that, I'd like to encourage you to quickly share this broadcast, share this live stream on your watch party device. If you're on Facebook Live, go down the list, share, invite. We want to have a very wonderful but yet impactful discussion tonight about some of the things that you may have wanted to ask about, some of the things you want to talk about. For those that are on YouTube Live, again, you can always share. In fact, we are monitoring with questions and answers in chat tonight. So on your chat areas, chat your questions, chat your concerns. And listen, we already realize that not everyone is going to be happy. Not everyone will be satisfied. But somewhere between these distinguished panel of men in our discussion and perhaps your conversations tonight, whether they are pro what you hear or against what you hear, we welcome that. We're making a promise and a commitment that we will deal with the issues, not with each other, okay? How about that? We want to be able to agreeably disagree and do it with integrity. In fact, I want the world, black, white, Hispanic, Native American, Asian, to see that black men can come together and reasonably have conversation without name calling, without being degrading, without being condescending. But we call ourselves kings out in the streets and in the community. Let's act like that. So I welcome your very, very honest, open, and organic opinions. We even welcome those who tonight would say, I don't agree with anything you all have to say, but just say it respectfully, and we'll do the same for you. So with that is being said tonight, again, this is called Black Man Talk. We kind of interchange black man talk, black men talk. Either way, I think you get the picture. We blacked out the sanctuary. We blacked out the screen. And tonight, first of all, I'm honored to have Brother Greg Jackson, who is a leading, and I don't use the word organization, I want to use the word movement, all right? He is leading a movement, an organization, a nonprofit called Heal Charlotte. We're grateful that he's here on tonight. Elder John Redmond is not only a church leader, but he is a community leader. He is an elder in the Church of God in Christ, elder serving here at City Church, but also he is a very concerned father in this community. Then finally, we have to my right, Dr. Jeffrey Sheard, who is, we honor him because he is one of the last but great HBCU outstanding professors. He teaches and leads at North Carolina A&T State University, our alma mater. He, again, not only is a professor, but also an author. He's also a national spokesperson, particularly as it relates to fatherhood initiatives, and also a member here at the City Church. And then, of course, tonight I'm moderating. It's my goal tonight to stimulate thought, to provoke questions, and to have a pretty comprehensive conversation about the things that we all have experienced in the last several weeks, if not months. Father, tonight as we pray, we ask and invite and acknowledge you. I'm reminded tonight that the Bible says, woe to them that go down to Egypt for help, who rely on horses, who rely on the men, who rely on the resources, but don't look toward you, the Holy One of Israel, nor regard you, the Lord. So tonight we just look towards you. We regard you as our help. God, would you help? Would you strengthen? Would you heal our land, our community, and our families? Father, we ask tonight that you would get glory and honor. And as we dialogue one with each other, that you tonight would be in the midst of us. May you bring solutions and healings even through the church, to communities both far and near. In Jesus' name we ask and pray. Amen. So tonight, we purposely did not send out notes. We didn't send out outlines. We didn't send out Q&A forms. We wanted it to be real time, on time, and in person. And so I'm just going to throw out tonight, and why don't we do this first? Brother Greg, let's start with you. Give us a little bit about, number one, just your background first. Tell us about you, family, background, and then we'll come back around and talk about organization and what it's meant the past few weeks.
Yes, so I am 36 years old, adopted to Charlotte. I'm from the Bronx, New York, father of 3, 15, 9, and 4, all girls, so y'all pray for me. I am from a single-parent household. My mom is my superwoman, superhero. I lived in Baltimore for a while. I'm a descendant of some strong grandparents. My grandfather was a social entrepreneur in the community. He literally had his own supermarket on the corner in Baltimore where people would literally go to him before they went to the supermarket because they knew they had that conversation. So rest in peace to my grandfather, Leonard Bailey. My grandmother, Paula Bailey, one of the strongest black women I ever met in my life. Very tied in with the Black Panthers. She was a conduit of her community. Just everyone in my neighborhood knew my grandmother. So I was always around these socialites that just were endowed into the community. Growing up, met my father that I can really remember. I know he was in my life a little earlier, but I met him when I was about 13, 14 years old, and then grew a relationship with him, lived with him in New York. My father was from the other side of the tracks in the Bronx, had to do other things to get income inside of the house, and he was willing to do that, risk his freedom to do certain things. But he was also a socialite. He was also in his community. He was also that same dude that would walk up the street and go through 18 conversations. It's in your blood. It's in my blood to do that.
And that leads to your leadership today in Charlotte and Hill, Charlotte.
Yes, and getting to Charlotte, I went to culinary school, sous chef at Hilton University. Working there, been through a ton of restaurants, doing music for a long time. Okay. And that was like my thing. It was always service, either serving through food or serving through music. Not really knowing what my purpose was, but just knowing I was passionate about doing some type of service. 2016 happened, the murder of Keith Lamont Scott. There was a protest that happened in Charlotte. And from there, I got a lot of spotlight, highlights, and media attention for my big mouth down there protesting.
I want to hold that thought there because one of the questions I'm going to ask tonight is, what have you seen change in the last 4 years from Keith Lamont Scott to what we see now? I want to go to Dr. Shedd, Elder Redmond, and then we're just going to have I'm going to throw out a word, and we're just going to go at with some of your all's responses, okay? Dr. Jeffrey Shedd, please tell us something about you, your family, why you're here at the table tonight.
Yes, my name is Jeff Shears. I'm a professor at North Carolina A&T, also a graduate at North Carolina A&T in social work. My area of expertise is father's influence on children. I'm also a father. Biggest influence in my life is my dad, and to see so many things come to full circle because he also demonstrated things in the 60s. I have 3 daughters. They're all adults now, and really trying to be mindful of what role we play as black men in our families, in our communities, in our churches as leaders. So I really appreciate being on this panel discussion this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Shedd. We'll also, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you for what you do on all fronts as a black man, home, school, community, and even across the nation, and then as well as you for what you do across the nation, but particularly here at home. That's in need. We'll get back to that in a moment. John Redmond, Elder Redmond, please, something about your background, your what's in your wheelhouse, and why you're here tonight as well.
Okay. My name is John Redmond. I am an elder here at the City Church, and I'm a North Carolinian. I am a father. My son, 26 years old, he lives in Raleigh, North Carolina, and my daughter is in Knoxville, North Carolina. I am a former man that wore the blue and a badge. a former police officer, so I'm very concerned about, what's going on in our country and our city, and I'm just happy to be here tonight.
When I had, and I want to thank those, by the way, who are watching on Facebook Live, and I want to appreciate it. And again, I'm chatting on back and forth, so if you see me kind of multitasking, it's because you all are sitting in your text, sitting in your chats. There's nothing off the table tonight. I need you to know that one of the questions that I think that we get often is, where is the church? Seems like everyone's speaking. Everyone's talking about the church. Well, tonight the church is on. We're live. We're not pulling scriptures from Genesis chapter 9 or Exodus chapter 15. We're talking America 2020. And right now there are some pressing issues that need to be dealt with, need to be talked about. Again, I encourage you to share this broadcast as much as you can. Invite friends, invite neighbors. In fact, if you've got young black men, get them out of the bedroom, get them out of the kitchen, bring them in front of the TV, bring them in front of the laptop, cut up the laptop real loud. Let's talk about issues. So thank you also, Elder Redmond, and thank you, men, for being here tonight. So here's how we're going to do this. Just one word. We're just throwing out words tonight. Take at it. Let's just start with some of the things that we're seeing in the media, on the news. And again, some of this, no one's prepared for any of these words because it's sort of organic, on time, real time. Let's start at the beginning. George Floyd. Someone talk to me about what you saw with George Floyd. 8 minutes, I think it was. The knee was on the neck. What's going through your mind? And Dr. Sheard, let's start with you first. What's going through your mind? And again, anyone can jump in after this, but we're probably, a little over 30 days now, something around that neighborhood. Does it get old? Does it change? Are we numb to this now?
I hate to say that we're numb to it. I mean, I just want to speak for me, personally. So it's to see such a graphic detail and to hear it, and not that these things haven't been happening before. And I mean, I see the things on social media, but I don't know, just for me personally, to see a man really close to my age beg for his life, it's really a traumatic experience for me. And that's motivated me with that incident, and my daughter really wanted to protest and be involved. So I've accompanied her, and we've been out in the streets and marched and protested and things of that nature. But you kind of put yourself, for me, I'm just speaking for myself, I put myself in a situation where, what's the difference? I think we've been sold a bad bill of rights, because I was always taught that if you spoke a certain way, you spoke certain way, drove whatever, did this and ever, you were, maybe we've arrived. But to see somebody my age, this dude was mid-50s, he was a family man, whatever. People talk about he was a leader in his community. If that can happen to him, it can happen to anybody at this table. And so that's what really resonated with me. So I actually personalized what I saw. And it was, like I said, so graphic for a man, a grown man, to beg for his life, and not for the officer not to have any mercy. It was tough. It was really tough to watch.
You talk about watching this, the question, does it get old? Do we get numb? You talked earlier about Keith Lamont Scott 4 years ago. Now here we are, George Floyd, thank you. Impulse, response, anger, upset, mad, it's okay now, it's understood, it's going to happen. What's the immediate reaction?
Everything that my flesh tells me to feel, I feel. I'm angry, upset. I am sick and tired of being sick and tired. All of those things come first. That was a public lynching that I watched, and I know it to be so. It was a call out for other bigots and supremacists to do the same thing across the nation. Just how cool, calm, and collective he was taking George Floyd's life with his hands in his pockets. So I also was on alert also to make sure that I started to get out there and started to do something and started to speak my voice. But also to see the response of 50 states protesting and countries around the world protesting, and which also let me know that I think everybody is done and tired and won't let this happen anymore. I think that resonated with me the most was, okay, there's a bunch of people subconsciously standing in solidarity, not even organizing together, but just saying, yo, we're sick and tired of this. This isn't going to happen no more. And that was probably the only thing that I was hopeful about. But I also knew that was a public lynching. So I'm prepared for times like this. I feel like, with my faith and me in my prayer closet and just the way that I am, I'm prepared to get out, and I know this is fighting time and recruiting time, so I'm also excited because of that.
Yeah, I just want to interject too that just the feeling that came over me, and then wanting to do something and not just rally and not just march, but both fear and anger. And one thing I was able to do with a colleague of mine in a interracial organization I'm in is to put something for men to be able to talk to their children about what they're seeing, to be able to talk about even the anger that we may feel, and really went to the scripture about sometimes anger is justified. Even Jesus Christ got anger when he went to the church, when he went into the turning over the tables or whatever in the synagogue. So there's a justifiable anger, and how do we deal with that? So I had to kind of go to the word myself, because it was an anger right there, and sometimes anger can be manifest in very negative ways. So I had to make sure that I use that energy of anger in a positive light, and not just a protest, which is good, but to try to do something constructive. As I figured there are other men who's like, how do I have this conversation with my sons? How do I have these conversations with my daughter about what's going on out here? Because the media, particular social media, is going to shed just one light on it. But how do I have a constructive conversation with my adult or my teenage kids about what's going on? And so colleague and I wrote just a one-pager about how to have this conversation, which for me it was therapeutic, just to write down how do I do this and how do I handle this situation.
They say that anger is a second emotion, right? And if anger is a second emotion, what was that first emotion that made you angry? Someone online said the fact that the cop had his hand in the pocket, which gave a sense of confidence, a sense of comfort. I knew I'd get away with this. And without cell phone cameras, even with the camera facing him, hand still in the pocket, your anger is a second emotion. So what's under the anger that brought tears to your eyes, that caused you to write that writing? Or what really is the underpinning makes you want to get in the flesh, as you said?
Just the fact that we're still here. And I don't know if that's an emotion, but the fact that we're still here, and I, as a 36-year-old man, have to have that conversation with my child. And it's a conversation that my mother had to have with me, that my grandmother had to have with my mother. So the fact of just understanding we're still here, and it's still going to be justified in some type of way for the opposition. They're gonna get away with this, and he knew it. And I think that brought the anger first, because you think America shows you that we're past certain things, and then you get this reminder that we're still back at certain places in this time.
Yeah, this whole post-racial Obama era, man, I drank the Kool-Aid. I was like, oh, we've arrived. I remember sitting there with tears rolling down my eyes when he was elected president. I was like, wow, we've arrived. But then to see this happen, and it's crazy when I compare, what my dad went through in the 60s, where he really did not have any white friends or colleagues. I got white friends and colleagues locally and nationally. And I had particular white female colleagues to reach out to me and like, hey, I'm just checking on you. But I didn't have a lot of my white brothers who I consider good friends. Wow. They didn't reach out. And I'm like, what is that about? Is it that they don't know what to say? Or what is that silence? What volume does that silence speak? And I eventually did have a white brother reach out to me and just like, I'm sorry. I mean, I can't walk a mile in your shoes, but I just want to let you know I was thinking about you. But that's the difference I think that I'm experiencing versus what my father's generation experience, because they grew up in a segregated society. We grew up in a very integrated society. I mean, my neighbors are white, and for there not to be any, like, man, how are you feeling with this? You know, that is concerning to me, and maybe it shouldn't be concerning, but it is concerning to me, because I'm like, that silence is so loud to me.
Well, and that's real good, just to piggy off of that. Fortunately, I have some white friends, and they did reach out to me as a brother. Not only did they reach out, they let me know how they felt about me. And we had dialogue. We had dialogue about what happened and what's happening even now, because we meet every Friday morning. But one of my biggest concerns was not just the officer that was on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, but it was the other officers that was around him. I think it was Diedrich Bonhoeffer that said, "Silence in the face of evil is evil itself." And for them to stand by and allow him to do this, even though a couple of the officers had only been on the job 3 to 4 days, I still feel like they should have stepped up and made him get off of George Floyd's neck. And for them not to do that is really concerning, because there always has to be a leader. I mean, he was the leader in this act, this heinous act that he did. He was the leader of it. But for them not to say anything, they were followers of that leader.
When you look at, and we're going to kind of turn a corner now, and let's talk about our white friends. Let's talk about racism. Let's talk about whether it's systemic, institutionalized, blatant, outright. You talked about, all of you all have talked about white friends. So, you know, you look at NASCAR. You look at what's happening with, you know, Bubba Wallace, and now, obviously, as of lately, it was not what they thought, but someone capitalized on that media spin. Someone capitalized. The term white silence has become very popular now. So when you look back at the lady friend versus the guy friends, your friends, the rebel flag. You look at conservative, the soldiers and all of the different the dismantling of these things. Is it hate or is it heritage? When you look at the rebel flag, is it hate, is it heritage? For you not to hear from some of your white friends, is it racism, or is it the fact they just don't quite know what to say?
I would like to lean on that they don't know what to say, and it's an uncomfortable topic, you know. So that's what I want to, you know, I want to give them the benefit of the doubt, those who haven't reached out or whatever. And I keep hearing about the rebel flag, and you want to get on to history that it wasn't really the rebel flag, it was the Confederate flag of Virginia and this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, those who march with that flag are representing something. So, yeah, we can use historical facts or whatever and dispute that it is heritage, not hate. But if you look at people who what that flag represents to them, you know, so whether it's Klan, whether it's white supremacists that use that flag, you can't stand on this historical documentation that this was not the Confederate flag, it was the Confederate flag of the Virginia or whatever you want to stand on. So at the end of the day, if whatever offends my brother, right, shouldn't we be conscious of that? So regardless of what the historical document is, if that offends my brother, or if that makes a brother feel a certain type of way, intimidated, or bring up issues of injustice or whatever, then why offend your brother?
I think that it was heritage as well. I've had some of my white friends to speak to me about that a lot they were taught a lot of the racism that they growing up that was embedded in them is because they were taught by by their forefathers, but then they see something totally different now, and they're teaching their kids differently. And so what they shared with me was that they have to go back to the home and teach their children not necessarily to be that way, not necessarily to be standoffish to African Americans, but to embrace them and give them an opportunity just like they do anybody else. And so I think it starts with that. I think it starts with talking and having conversations with each other. One of the main things that I looked at with my friends were they going to be silent? And I had made up in my mind that I was going to ask them, but before I could even ask them that, they approached me and said, yes, we want to talk about this. We want to, we got something to say, and we want to discuss this with you. And so it really opened up the door for some great dialogue.
Yes, I'm sorry, it's crazy that given a genome project that shows that race is a social construct, right, that we're really not different genetically, that we still abiding by this issue of race.
Yeah, and my white friends, the majority reached out to me. The majority, I know them because of the service that I do. And a lot of them reached out. People I haven't talked to in, a year called me and, were standing with you in solidarity with you. And then, some friends that I have that did not say anything, or, we were having COVID-19 meetings, and COVID-19 was such a thing, and we have response teams for them, and there was no response for what just happened with George Floyd or Breonna Taylor, but I called them out. I didn't give them an opportunity to be silent, and that's their response was, okay, let's get active, and if you need me to call you out so you can do something, I'm okay with that also, just as long as you don't sit there and not do anything. And that's what I can't allow. I can't allow white silence to actually happen. Not in my presence, not in my oikos of people that I do know. So I had to hold everybody accountable.
Now, I'm going to change the corner, another corner here. Defund the police. People are saying, hey, get over it, black folk. It is what it is. It's going to happen, unfortunately. There seems to be two major waves of statistical data, whether more blacks are killed by police or whites are killed by police. You've got the conservative news saying that's totally wrong, and the liberal media says, oh, that's accurate. And of course, whether it's NASCAR, whether it's the news and Bubba Wallace, you get the people playing off of all of these fears and all of these unknowns. But look what's happening in Seattle tonight. Seattle says we're building our own force, building our own team, and then you have a murder or you have a shooting, 48 hours ago, and they can't get help, and they're trying to get them help. So what, when you hear this defund the police campaign, what resonates with you? What's real? What's not real?
Well, I'm coming from my own lens here, so speaking on behalf of Dr. Shears.
And you approve this message.
And I approve this message, right? Again, we are trying to, as I understand defund the police, that we're going to take some funding from police precincts and departments and put them in the community to do X, Y, and Z. Some of the things that need to happen in our community, can't nobody fund. All right? Things that need to happen in our community around, whether it's parenting or co-parenting, my platform is fathers and men taking their rightful place in our communities. We can't have anybody come outside and fund. We got to take the responsibility on our own. So we're in another program with, making sure that go through proper training, and the other, but to move that money into the community to do things that we should be doing, the black church should be doing, the men should be doing in our community, funding is not going to help. We got to stand up and do some of that stuff on our own.
Yeah, so defund the police is a headline. And I promised myself after 2016 that I will not fall for headlines and not look at the fine print. And there is no fine print to defund the police. If someone can show me what that looks like, then I can probably try to digest it. But there's no agenda or policy or plan or legislation that is attached to that headline. Now, if you want to say reallocate funds of the police to go to education and training, particularly education, then I can understand that. If you want to say, let's change policies inside of the police station so certain trainings and education is mandatory, let's do anti-racism classes inside of the cadet academy, then that makes sense. But you can't continuously throw these large headlines out, which are catchy, and there's no definition or description to them, and then you have a bunch of people yelling something that they don't even know what that looks like, and it's It's what the media plays off of as far as seeing a young black man or a black man, period, being passionate on television and not speaking with all zeal and no wisdom. And they're used to seeing zeal, 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 zeal. And it's about time that we take that zeal, match it with wisdom, and not just go on television and say defund the police, but give me some steps and policies of what that actually looks like. So when I go talk to the chief, Chief Jennings of CMPD, I can give him bullet points and say, this is what it looks like to defund police. And I don't believe in if somebody does something to me, I'm calling the police. And that's what's gonna happen. So I don't think, I'm of the belief when it comes to the police having community relations inside of the community, I have a Huey P. Newton approach where I'm going to police the police. I'm going to have community engagement and relations with them so I can hold them accountable when they come in my neighborhood. It's my duty and my responsibility to know the officer that's patrolling in my neighborhood. It's his duty and his responsibility to know who I am, not just as a black man, but as a citizen that lives in this community that you're patrolling. So we have to be very, very cautious of the highlight headline that we're putting out there, and make sure that we're very strategic and militant about that.
And I appreciate what you're saying. And you get both of you all are getting a lot of love online here about the accurate meaning and the sub headlines of what defund the police means. And I think we all understand that it doesn't mean take money away, take the police away, but reallocating and finding better uses of those funds. But question now, and we'd be remiss if we didn't come from a Christian biblical aspect. When people cry out, and I appreciate what you said, we cannot just go through the headlines of defund the police, because to me it gives fuel to the fire of anarchists, of let's just call it Bible talk, lawlessness, right? Rebellion, and that combined with a very liberal, I hate to use the word millennial, mindset, it creates chaos in a future culture that might get a Seattle, Washington out of control here in Charlotte.
I agree. Defund the police is just unbelievable, because like Mr. Jackson said, if something happens, I'm going to call the police. I'm not going to call my friends. I'm not going to call my neighbors. I'm going to call the police. I'm going to dial 911. So, like you said, I think that we do need to reallocate some of the funds to train the police. And make them even more aware of patrolling in our neighborhoods, not just for racial profiling, but they're sworn in to protect, but yet they're killing the African Americans at an alarming rate. The last I checked, it was 10 to 1, if not even higher than that, of the police killing black men. So I do agree that they do need to be trained even more.
Yeah, but we're talking about defund the police and reallocating to the police academy, whatever, or training. That's not defunding a police. When I'm understanding, defunding police is actually pulling funding and putting in other programs outside. I'm totally in agreement of making sure that police officers in the academy have training, and we have to demilitarize the police. It's like, I'm going to date myself, but why can't police officers be like Andy Griffith? Know people in the community, be a part of the community, with this whole military, and it's changed. It really has changed. This whole military presence that police officers have now is just different than what it might not need to be that way. And so, but yeah, as they talk about defund the police, reallocating within the police department is fine. But if you go start pulling money and resources from the people who are there to protect and serve, then yeah, I do have an issue with
and
that.
I want to cut you off, Dr. Sheridan. Thank you for that, and I appreciate the reminder about Andy Griffin. What a peaceful day that was. What a seemingly Mayberry atmosphere. Yeah, but here's the real though. Here's the real. No matter how much reallocating of resources, demilitarizing the police, when you still got 10 plus people murdered in Chicago this weekend, 110 shootings. Now people online said, oh, you don't know if they were black or not. I said, you know what, you're right. They very well could have been Asian, Native American, could have very well been Indian, you know what? And when the final report comes out, I'll be the first to come online and apologize. But my hunch says.
You don't need to apologize.
Right, so but that being said though, With this generation, Charlotte, North Carolina, 4 people now are dead since Sunday night's 1 a.m. party, Saturday night's 1 a.m. party. You could do all this as the funding and all of the reallocating. Will that get the message across in our young African-American minds? Or is it too late?
No. All right. So that when we're talking about the police department, we're talking about the police department. When we say accountability, I really want everybody to understand this. Accountability is a two-way street. I'm going to hold you accountable, but you're going to have to hold me accountable. I hold people in my community accountable. I believe that the presence of a community leader that's place-based inside of a neighborhood does a lot for that neighborhood and a lot for that corridor or wherever you are. And if that's missing, if there's a lack of us being leaders inside of our own community, then the message does not get to the youth. It does not get to the people that are inside of criminal activity, the people that are from low-income families, that are in a survival mentality, that are doing things outside of their character to go and take care of their families. Because we have to be real, a lot of the hardships that happen in the community provoke a lot of criminal behavior. The lack of resources and opportunities that come to the black and brown communities have us fishing for ourselves in a survival mode. So when we talk about black on black crime, we have to address the black resource and the black opportunities. Where are they? And how do they get there? And how do we get them there? And then, of course, always addressing, we cannot say Black Lives Matter and then go kill ourselves. There has to be a certain point where we have to look at our own community and break the stigma that we have in our own community, just like we ask every other institution to break their stigma. Officers, break your stigma. Go get mental health checked. I don't care what your officer friends say. I don't care what your superiors say. If you've been on 50 emergency calls and 25 of them are traumatic, go have a conversation with your therapist. It should get you promoted, not demoted. It's the same thing in a black community. You need to recognize that killing us is a detriment to our movement and to pushing the needle forward.
I gotta stop you because you are taking the crescendo of the conversation, and you about 5 minutes too early, right? We're gonna no, don't apologize. We're gonna spend the last 10 minutes dealing with 2 things you just said, because that to me is the climax of tonight's conversation. So don't go nowhere. We're gonna come back to that. But what I do wanna say, a couple of comments online are simply addressing the fact that law and order is needed. Law and order is needed. That's a hard pill for a lot of our younger people, for a lot of us in the black community, a lot of us, and I'm not gonna get political here, but that's hard for our liberal Democratic friends to understand, especially when it comes out of the mouth of a polarizing picture coming out of the White House by the name of President Donald J. Trump. Now, you all have said it. I don't want to live in a country without law and order. I don't want to live in a city without law and order. And as we bring this back down to Charlotte, North Carolina, we got questions to ask, and I want to get back to that whole Black Lives Matter movement, because my thought is, how do we expect white folk to respect our lives if we don't respect our own lives? And the numbers don't lie, whether it's Chicago, Baltimore, Detroit, or right here in Charlotte this past weekend. So I'm not going to hog the conversation. I will come back to that Black Lives Matter conversation, because it seems to be a duplicit movement in our country by killing each other every other weekend, but yet marching with signs saying our lives matter. Something's confusing here.
Yeah, it's so to get to law and order is necessary, right? Justice is necessary. I believe there's law and order all over this country. It's law and order everywhere. Justice is necessary, and protection and service is necessary. I don't have officers on the street to give me law and order. I have officers on the street to protect and serve me. That is it. And that's all they should be doing. And I think we need to realize black people do not feel served nor protected. So I do want to address that comment of law and order. That's for the judge and the attorneys and the people in the judicial system, not for police officers.
I I have to beg to differ with you, Mr. Jackson. As an ex-police officer, yes, because if you break the law, they're going to have to bring order. So yes, they do bring law and order. But see, I'm from a different generation. I was raised to respect the men in blue. I was raised to respect my teachers at school. I was raised to respect people that are older than myself. We call them the elders. Yes, sir. I still say that to this day. When I meet older gentlemen, yes, sir. No, sir. The man in blue, I thank you for serving. I speak to them. I eat when COVID-19 wasn't so prevalent, like in Chick-fil-A and places like that, and they would be in there eating, and the policemen, I would speak to them and thank them for serving in the community. But I think it starts from that. But when you don't have respect for the police, just because a policeman did what they did to George Floyd did not make me lose respect for every police officer. I need the police officers. I respect the police officers. And if I need them, I'm going to call them because we can't overlook them just because there's always going to be some bad apples in every bunch.
I had a conversation with a church mother, dear, sainted, older, wiser mother. She said something that startled me. Although I felt it, believed it, and I know many people feel that, but very, very few people are willing to go on record publicly and say this. And it kind of stems the two conversations here. Let's leave Minneapolis for a moment. Let's go to Atlanta. In the name of police officers, you've got a gentleman in Atlanta, 27 years old. He went further than just resisting arrest. He actually got into a confrontation, pulls the stun gun. That officer is somebody's daddy, somebody's brother, somebody's son. And that officer wants to go home that night. Now, again, I know that a lot can happen in real time. A lot of stuff is going on here and there. But at the end of the day, it's a fine line between defending and protecting, as we saw in Minneapolis, and where we perhaps could have made better decisions. That's the concern. In the name of community policing or a police officer. What I'm getting at is this. Sometimes we over-glorify and make, I hate to say it, I know I'm getting in trouble with this, but could there have been a better way we as black folk could have answered that police officer that night instead of resisting and tussling and fighting? Could there have been a better outcome if that's my son? I want to say it's got to be a yes or no, sir. Do whatever you need to do to get home. Don't flex, don't spar, don't take matters in your own hand because of where we're at in this climate, because it costs that boy's life.
I would ask, and this is from me speaking to a lot of officers on CMPD, why didn't that officer call him an Uber ride home? Because he was compliant for a lot of that time, very much compliant. And the knee-jerk reaction to me being compliant, to me doing what I'm supposed to do, to me not driving but being parked, and I'm still going to be detained and put in handcuffs, makes me feel like there is nothing I can do to get out of the situation that I can. Now, would I have reached for his taser or his stun gun? Would I have done that? No, I wouldn't have. Do I think that officer should have done what he did? That wasn't a good response because he wasn't in imminent danger. The young man, Rashard Brooks, was running away. And due to the attack force continuum, the response to that was out of line and out of order. So that officer got exactly what he deserved when it came down with, I believe, 11 counts of murder. That right there, I felt like was supposed to happen. Do I encourage young black men to do exactly what Rashard Brooks did? No, because I'm encouraging you to go home. Those last 2 minutes of that cost him his life.
I agree with you, Mr. Jackson. I think that his response, what the police officer did, I think that he did, ain't no doubt about he overreacted. He shot the man in the back. But I do think that he should have just complied with the officer and allowed the officer to put him in the cuffs. I think that he was afraid because he had been in trouble before that came out, and he wanted to go home to be with his family. I understand all of that, but I do feel like, yeah. I mean, it was his daughter's birthday weekend, and he was, he just wanted to be with his family, and I understand that. But I do feel like he should have. That's neither here nor there now because he's gone. But I would have complied. I would have allowed him to put me.
He
in the
may be
cuffs.
gone, but what should we be telling the next
Comply.
27-year-old young black
Comply.
man?
What I would tell the next 27-year-old black man that gets stopped by the police, comply.
Dr.
That's
Shears.
what I would tell them.
Well, you can tell this 53-year-old black man to comply, because that's what I'm doing. I get pulled over, I'm turning on my interior light, let them know that I'm not a threat. I'm letting them know I got a wife and kids at home when they pull up, before we even start any conversation. And because at the end of the day, that is my goal. Whether you give me a ticket, whatever, at the end of the day, I'm trying to get to the house. So, yeah, I'm complying too.
I will tell the young black man to learn how to make a complaint, learn how to sit down and understand internal affairs, learn how to keep up with your complaint, learn who's the superiors. All of that education is absolutely necessary because you got to win the war. That night is a battle.
Yeah.
And you have to win the war.
You said something about accountability is a two-way street. And I'm beginning to wonder, do blue lives matter more than black lives matter? What happens when there are black lives that wear blue? Because a minute ago, right, Charlotte, North Carolina, we've had Rodney Monroe, Kerr Putney, a black sheriff, under a black president, a black mayor. We've had a lot of black faces in high places, but we're still having this conversation tonight. When the deal goes down behind closed doors, I wonder, is blue brighter than black?
And that's why I spoke of education and not training. Training is happening. It happens one time. It's not reoccurring the way it needs to be. And I spoke of anti-racism education and certifications that need to happen with every institution, not just the police department, because it's not, people say this all the time, there are bad apples on a good tree. The tree ain't good. I just want to let everybody know this is not a good tree that bad apples are sprouting from. There's good apples on a bad tree. And the bad apples are always going to be on a bad tree. And we have to recognize that if America was a t-shirt, racism is cotton. It is woven in the fabric of this country. So just because we have black leadership does not mean the system is fixed. And that's what we need to start doing. I run programs. I'm currently starting to shift some of my programs to where we're making systemic changes. We're focused on policy, legislation, not just not just voting, but knowing who we're voting for and knowing who we're putting in office.
You got people online tonight who beg to not agree with you regarding complying. You know, some of the statements are tonight, compliance does not work all the time. Ask Philando Castro. Someone saying tonight that Mr. Brooks was running away and drunk. He probably would have caught him. Police aren't trained to shoot people in the back. The comments go on and on. Fear makes you do things that you didn't know what you were doing. So as much as we believe in compliance, and I like what you said earlier about how to file complaints, but unfortunately, compliance for many and filing a complaint the next day is a day late and $1 short. That 5 seconds, that 10 minutes, that 2.5 minutes is right now, unfortunately, costing a lot of people their lives. So is the accountability and onus now on the police department, not so much on us as young men, young or old, not knowing how to comply?
Absolutely.
Did you point to me when you said, oh?
I was pointing to us. I'm on the 50 plus side.
All right.
And you were really on the 50 plus side. All right.
Well, and I totally get what folks are saying online. My point is that does it increase my chances of getting out of that situation if I comply? Not saying that compliance is always a positive, but does it increase my chance? I'm a stats guy. How much do my chances improve when I'm saying, yes, sir, and I'm doing whatever I can to make that officer feel comfortable. Like I said, if I'm pulled up at night, I turn my interior lights on so he knows, oh, this dude ain't got nothing to hide. I let him know, hey, sir, I got wife and kids at home. I'm trying to get home. My first thing out of my mouth, and not that it's going to always happen. I'm just saying, how much does that increase my chance that I'm going to get out of this situation?
I think, and that's a real good point, Dr. Shears, because I think that it increases your chances of getting out of it very high. I'm going to always comply. I'm going to turn the interior light on. I'm going to hold my hands out the window, let them know that I do not have a weapon. I'm going to say yes, sir, because my whole objective is to go home. To fight them, you'll never win that war. You'll never win that battle. So why fight? Why not comply? You're not going to win.
And I understand the argument of why do we have to do that? As a grown man,
Right.
and I got some 24-year-old dude pulling me up. He fresh out of college. I'm a grown man. I got kids your age. Why do I need to say yes, sir, to you? Right. Why do I need to hold my hands out of the car window? Why do I need to turn my interior light on? I get that. Why do I have to do that? But as you say, I loved it, that this is a battle. We're going to fight the war. This is a battle. The battle tonight is I'm getting home. So I understand that. And I understand how belittling it is for me to have to do that to some young police officer just pull me over. But I'm going to do it because me getting home is more important than my pride.
Well, Dr. Sheard, I don't necessarily, that's a good point that you made. If he's younger than me, I may not say yes, sir, but I am going to break the ice. The last time I faced the police, I broke the ice with him, and I literally had the man laughing because I don't want to wear the stigma that I'm angry or that I'm going to fight him or that I'm going to resist. No, I'm letting him know I'm not going to resist you. Whatever you tell me to do, I'm going to comply. But I also want to let you know that I am friendly. I'm not going to fight you. I'm not going to try to take your weapon from you because my whole objective is to go home. Like you said, you're a husband, you got children at home, you got a wife at home. I want to go home.
But that's why I led with why didn't that officer call him an Uber? That's why I led with that first and not with the complying part, because he complied. He did. Yeah, so at what point does the officer comply with me complying? And that has to be a response for the officer. And that's something that even officers that I talk to, they the first ones that said they could have drove him home. They could have did that. Why didn't they do that? And that speaks to a deeper rooted problem that's inside of the department. When you have someone that's complying, you have to comply with compliance. Like at some point.
Sure. Now, again, I'm monitoring on some of the online statements, and I just want you all to know who are online tonight. Thank you for commenting, your expressions, your questions, your comments. It is sad that we have to have this conversation as 53, 50, and on, and at this stage in our lives. But it is a daily grind, a daily battle that has to be won so you can see tomorrow. Until policing practices and policies can be changed with better education. You're right. How much more should our compliance create the police's compliance, right? I want to stretch this a little bit. We're right at the hour break right now, and I want to stretch this another 5 minutes. I think we're in a good conversation. Some of the comments online, does compliance equal weakness? Because now I'm coming out from a biblical point of view. We're taught to respect authority. That's why we say yes, sir. We're taught to be honored, to blessed is the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. We're taught to comply and respect those in authority who serve in leadership areas. We're talking about lawlessness. We're talking about rebellion. We're talking about anarchy. Everything right now seemingly that we have to go upstream to do what we're taught in the church to do, what we taught our sons and daughters to do, right? Now, someone made the point online. They talk about the mentality of master. The massa mentality. It's sad that we have to go back to this subordinate, condescending mentality just to make it home at night. But I think we all would agree, do what you got to do to make it home. My theory is there's a spirit of pride and a swelling up of self-confidence that didn't jive what we're talking about tonight. You got a generation of young black men who are saying, man, those old guys online tonight are dumb. They're outdated. I ain't submitting to nobody. I ain't saying yes to nobody. I'm a king now. I am who I am. And you're going to run across that Bonnie Piper, that bad cop who's looking for action. And here we are again a year later having the same conversation. That's what concerns me.
Right, I'm sorry. You're exactly right, Dr. Stevens. They say that pride, one theologian said that pride is the pregnant mother of sin. Pride will get you nowhere. And as far as the master mentality, that's just absolutely ridiculous. There's been times where I have, like I said earlier, broke the ice with the officer. I said yes, sir, and no, sir to him. And guess what? He started saying yes, sir, and no, sir to me, because I wanted the officer to know that I'm not a threat to him. I'm not a threat to him. And when I let him know that, most of the time, there's been very rare that it hasn't happened like that. Most of the time, they'll let me know that they're not a threat to me either. And they will receive me as I have been receiving them. So I think that your chances are better, like Dr. Shear said earlier, your chances are better when you comply. And to your point, Mr. Jackson, unfortunately, the gentleman down in Atlanta, he complied to a certain extent, but he didn't comply all the way. Because he wouldn't allow them to put the cuffs on him, so that's not compliant. Now, he shouldn't have been shot in the back, though, don't get me wrong. He should not have been shot in the back, and that's why the officer's in jail. But you're right, I do feel like they could have called him an Uber, they could have taken him home. You're absolutely right about that, and I'm sure that there's several officers who would have said the same thing.
And those are the type of policies you want to see put in place, so there is no question what happens at this stage of engagement.
Right. Yeah, at this stage of engagement, we should know what's going to happen next. And those type of things and that's why I like to keep referring back to education and educating yourself on what needs to happen. Because when we throw out these big headlines and we're not attaching policy to it, and we're not learning, well, what is the policy? What is what happens next now? I pride myself on having community relations, and I just want to talk real quick about that, because we can talk about compliant, we can talk about education, but community relations has a lot to do with this right now. If I purposely, when I run into an officer, I know your superior on purpose. I know your sergeant, your lieutenant, your major, I know your chief, and I know them, and I will call them immediately. And there was a time in my life where I was on the other side of the tracks, and I didn't even look to have that conversation to make any community relations with the department. But what has worked in my favor, me speaking personally, when I get pulled over, and it has happened to me where I've gotten pulled over, or my intern has gotten pulled over right in front of me, and because of the work that I do in the community, because of me being a conduit in my community the way that I am, and making I'm available for both sides. My intern got pulled over. The officer that pulled him over knows me. And when I got out the car to walk to the car, the officer said, "Oh, Greg, that's my intern. He's fine." "Oh, if you were Greg, you're fine. It's okay." So this, at some point too, that matters. That knowing somebody, knowing their superior, knowing the people that patrol your area, and not making it a war all the time matters in some way.
And that's a level of social capital that you have,
Yes.
that you're able to expend. You know, when we don't have that social capital, if I'm giving advice to a young brother or whatever, I'm like, what we're talking about is simple human interaction, that I'm just trying to de-escalate the situation. Because 9 times out of 10, if he's pulling me over by myself, he's probably intimidated, he's scared, so I'm de-escalating the situation, let him know I'm not a threat. Right. So we could talk about master syndrome or whatever. That's just basic human nature, because one thing I know is that he's not going to de-escalate. So if I come at him a certain way, he's just going to take it as a police officer. I don't know none that's going to step down if they're confronted. So it's just basic human interaction.
And most of us, have never called anyone massa a day in our lives. I just want to let that, like, we have to be mindful of the people that died for the rights and privileges that we had. Let's not act like we've been calling somebody massa. We ain't never been a slave at all. So don't even put yourself in the same shoes as one of our ancestors like that's happening. If just because I comply or I look at an officer and say yes sir does not mean I'm demasculating myself or I'm saying massa. Let's cut that in the butt right now.
I agree. Let me add, I want to close out on two thoughts before we bring closer to tonight's session, volume 1. I want to go back to the Black Lives Matter messaging, but I also want to talk about fatherlessness, because I think at the end of the day, we all would agree that the stem root in the black community in particular is the lack of fathers in the home, whether it's the natural father, a surrogate father, a coach, a mentor, somebody, as you said, who takes that intern to the side and says, I'm going to help. African proverb says, you bend the tree while it's green, and that tree gets too old, it breaks, there's nothing you can do. Before we talk those two impact caps, let's look back at one more event. Charlotte, North Carolina, 3 nights ago, 4 people tonight are dead. And this wasn't a bad cop. This wasn't Seattle, wasn't Minneapolis, wasn't nobody looting. It's not even social distancing in COVID-19, right? You got 1, 2 in the morning, a party with, I don't remember what the last count was, but it was hundreds of us. Again, it could have been Native Americans, maybe, could have been Asians in town, I don't know. But I think on Beatties Ford Road, it was us. Something gets popped off, folk get to shooting, cars get to screeching, and tonight 4 are dead. How do you reconcile that with the whole Black Lives Matter? And I'm not, again, this is not a massive mentality, but the white folk that we want to march with us and peacefully protest with us, when we ask them to hold those signs up that say Black Lives Matter, risk your lives for standing with us, but they got to watch the news and say, why aren't these kids social distancing? All right, now we're talking about 10 and 12-year-olds here. The guy was 40-something years old that got shot, and the other one was in his late 30s, if I'm not mistaken. Why are they out at 1 in the morning in Charlotte during COVID, in the middle of all this civil unrest, and now we got 4 more lives? Do those lives matter as much as the ones that we've been seeing on the media the last 30 days?
And to add to that, Pastor, is, why aren't we outraged? Why aren't we organized, and why aren't we doing things for the black-on-black crime, which, I get it, that's the underlying message. Like, we are upset with these things happening when other people do them, but we do them within our own community. There seems that's what we have kind of glazed over on.
But there's a lot of people who will argue that all those black-on-black crime statistics are flawed, and truth to be told, that we don't kill ourselves as much as others kill themselves. Now, I don't believe that in a heartbeat. I believe black-on-black crime is what it is. I don't care what you say. No one is over off of Beatties Ford Road 1 in the morning from a different society or economical background. That's us getting mad, getting frustrated, taking matters in our own hand, and that's we have no fear from going to jail. We have no fear of dying early.
And there again, if you said before, have we just glazed over? Are we glazed over what we're seeing with the police and black men? No, I think we glazed over with black-on-black crime, and our young brothers getting killed and incarcerated. I think we've kind of glazed over that, and it's just like that's what happens. That's where that doesn't affect us. It's like seeing a violent movie. It just doesn't affect you anymore.
Yeah, and I want to be real clear. When I'm marching and I'm saying Black Lives Matter, there is no subdivision. You don't see anybody saying Black Lives Matter or when cops kill us. That's not the chant. The chant is Black Lives Matter.
Okay.
That means Black Lives Matter no matter what. It doesn't matter who's getting murdered or who's doing the murdering, Black Lives Matter. And I do want to shout out Tawana Brown, Gemini Boyd, Charles Robinson, people that were on Beatties Ford the next day having a march. Sheriff McFadden was out there and addressed the black-on-black crime and wanted to take back Beatties Ford. Shout out I seen Block Love out there with a speaker, and they are encouraging people to take back the community. What I did not see was a church out there saving lives. I didn't see a baptism pool. It's like 80 churches over there.
Well, the media that I saw 2 pastors, Clifford Jones for Friendship and West, Baptist West. I'm sorry, names from mine, but now I saw the 2 pastors there yesterday marching, peacefully protesting. Ricky Woods with Reverend Ricky Woods and Clifford Jones were out there yesterday. I did see them.
Okay, so shout out to Pastor Ricky Woods, but I do want to say, like, we have to recognize that we are addressing black on black crime. There are a bunch of community organizers that are out there saying we will not stand for this. And to my white friends, when you see black on black crime, that does not change your perspective of Black Lives Matter. If you're going to march with me downtown when a police officer shoots a young black man, you're going to march with me on Betty's Ford when a black person kills a black person. You don't get to choose when Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter at all times.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I want to make this statement. I had gotten into a heated discussion with some individuals on Facebook about Black Lives Matter because I didn't know a lot about Black Lives Matter. I really didn't. Obviously, I peacefully protest. I've been there out downtown, not in my clergy, not in a robe. I was in shorts and sweats, and it wasn't about me as a title as much at that time as a father and as an African-American man. My son actually provoked me to say, listen, I can't fathom the thought of me telling my grandkids all this happened and not one time did I go down there. But there's the stigma because I actually brought up some research, and as Dr. Shears says, I like to go back and research and kind of go dig behind the empirical data. And I didn't know Black Lives Matter was founded. And I understand people are saying separate the message from the messenger, the political campaign, and the chant today is two different things. Gotcha. But again, I got to come from a spiritual, biblicist point of view. How can two walk together except they agree? People are saying, well, this ain't the time to separate. Well, and I agree with that because the truth is, when I went downtown Charlotte and walked in March, I didn't try to figure out who was trans and who was gay and who was straight. Right. At that point, Black Lives mattered. But I think as we move forward, as we sit down for policy, as we sit down for reformation, as we sit down and get into the weeds of what really has to happen, $1.6 billion has been given to Black Lives Matter. I want to know, how do you allocate those monies? Who's really the recipient and the beneficiaries of all this money? Because you do have anarchists, you do have the liberals who are hitchhiking the Black Lives Matter movement. I don't care if it's North Carolina, North America, or all over the world. And then at the end of the day, you're going to want me as a clergy, man of God, to sit down with a group of trans, all right? And I'm not being insensitive when I say that, but they're going to say, we're all in this together as black people. I want to show the love of Jesus. I want to show the compassion of Christ. But if you want me to respect your agenda and your normalcy, expect my agenda, which is to see souls saved. So what you're saying is that I want to be accepted as normal. I want my life to matter. Great. Well, shouldn't my life matter as a clergy, as one who represents the bloodstained cross? So why is it that we have to embrace your agenda, but I have to be silent with my agenda? That's why I have an issue with the future opportunities to partner for greater change in our community, because we're not in agreement. We will be in agreement if I honor the fact that you feel the way you feel, but you have to equally honor the fact of who I am and what I stand for, and somewhere in between the two roads have to meet.
It's the ego. The ego gotta go. The ego to want a subdivision. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves. No one's humble. Everyone is chest out, ego, well, I matter, and I matter, and I matter. And people are making these subdivisions. Can we stick to one agenda for a moment, please? Mm-hmm. So we can stick the flagpole down and say we accomplished Black Lives Matter. Generally, Black Lives Matter. And then we'll get to you. But we have to first get respect on Black Lives Matter. And don't subdivide yourself. And then let's go pray. Let's go seek his face so he can come down and heal the land. I humble yourself, please.
Any other thoughts? Because, and thank you for that, by the way. And I think all of you all bring a very, very rich perspective to the conversation. I do want to make sure that before we close this time, we speak to fatherhood. We speak to fatherlessness. Because to me, at the end of the day, whether it's Minneapolis, Detroit, Atlanta, Tampa, Charlotte, we have a systemic problem that we can't blame the white man. I know we can go back 450 years and talk about the Willie Lynch syndrome and all of those philosophical components. But in 2020, I think if more dads would have been at home, we wouldn't have had those 4 people shot and killed this past weekend in Charlotte.
So, yeah, we certainly have an issue with fatherlessness, both not in the home, or fathers not being as involved as they should be. I know I give black men passes sometimes just because, we learn fathering through our own experiences with our fathers, and so many of us have grown up, not me, but, people in my family, colleagues, friends have grown up without fathers. And a part of it is the just self-worth of fatherhood in the black community. So we have men who don't feel that their worth is a father. We have women who, generations of Big Mama, and Big Mama ain't have nobody, wasn't a man, and Mama didn't have a man, and I don't need him. My baby don't need a daddy, and so it's some of those just attitudes that's been ingrained in us as the people, and for black men not to understand their place in families, communities, society. We always talk about black families being matriarchal. Well, if they're matriarchal, what's my role in the black family? And so we really have to get back to understanding the protective mechanism of, we talk about it takes a man to raise a man. Well, who's raising our men? Where are they getting their ideas of masculinity? So no, I don't have to say yes, sir, to that cop because I have been taught what a real man is. Who's protecting our young black women in the community if their dads aren't around? So those are issues that we really need to address. And as you say, talk about how do we overcome some of these issues? We can't bring in outside folks. We can't bring in these funding. We have to start these conversations and these interventions within our own communities and our own families. I often tell folks, hold that black father accountable in your family. A lot of times we go to the kids' events, we do this and the other. Call up your brother, like, hey man, I went to your kid's game, where were you? I went to your daughter's recital, where were you? We have to make our brothers and fathers accountable in our community, put their feet to the fire and make them stand to be a man.
Amen.
Yeah, I'm a black father. I didn't have a father in the household as a young child, and when I did have my father in the household, he was like halfway in, halfway out. So what I did know is my mother raised me and showed me how to be a parent, right? But when I had my first child, I had absolutely no idea how to be a father. Like, I did not know how to be a father. I really didn't understand what it was to be a father until I had men around me that were fathers at all moments and then were proud fathers. My pastor, Theo Schaefer, baptized me 3 years ago, and I learned a lot from just watching him interact with his children and then making it cool and making it okay to be vulnerable, transparent, to struggle, to not really know what to do next as a father. And I think a lot of that stuff, we have to start, just like you say, hold each other accountable and start getting in groups where this is my black father group, this is my father's group, and not to exclude our white brothers and sisters or Latina brothers and sisters, but as far as the black community, it's missing. For so long, women have been the backbone of the community. Women have been, just leading the black household, and it's a lack. And me being a 36-year-old man, a lot of me and my friends, we pride ourselves on being 80s babies that think it's cool to be dads and think it's cool to be liberated and free men operating in this world right now and being complete reflections and images of God. I do believe that there is not enough men in the community, not only black fathers, but men that walk and carry the cross and make it cool for people.
Sure.
And I don't know how anybody is going to understand how you are going to be a father until you understand how to have your spiritual father first. And that opened up the game for me.
Sure.
It's just learning that I have a father, that's not just my dad, but my spiritual father that died on the cross for me. And that alone put me in a mind state of where I can address and have a dad, because I know how to be loved. I know how to be loved by Christ, so I know how to love others. I know how to love my child, because I'm a child of his, and he loves me with agape love, So that's what I'm trying to reflect out.
What I'd like to do is this, and I know we're in a vein and we can go all night long, and there's all type of comments. We broke the 100 comment mark tonight and got shout outs for that, and so many people have so many perspectives tonight. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to bring this to a close. I want to ask each and every one of you all to give us a parting thought. Give us a parting thought. We've talked a lot about Charlotte, North Carolina. We've talked about policing, bad policing, reform, defunding the police, reallocating resources. We've talked about, mindsets and mentalities. We've talked about fatherhood and fatherlessness. We've talked about Black Lives Matter. People understand the value of making the message despite the messenger. But then we have people who say, hey, I'm not a part of Black Lives Movement. I can't agree with that movement. I can't stand with the movement that is demasculating black men and putting black men in their places. And so we're kind of all over the place tonight. We didn't spend a lot of time talking about President Donald Trump. We didn't spend a lot of time talking about candidate Joe Biden. We didn't talk a lot about a lot of other things that we probably could have gotten deep into the woods with tonight. We got to do this again. We're going to just keep it organic. We're going to be spirit-led. I think that somewhere at the intersection between faith and facts, somewhere between the intersection of real organic conversation, but yet healthy solutions, I think is what this series is probably going to eventually evolve in. I want to start with you, Dr. Shear, tonight, and then Brother Greg, and then at the end, Elder Redmond. Give us some parting thoughts, something that you want to leave all of these on Facebook Live and YouTube Live with tonight.
Well, my social worker in me says that this is just so therapeutic. Because black men don't really talk to each other in an organic, in-depth manner. We talk about the weather. We can't even talk about sports no more since the COVID. But, just from a therapeutic standpoint, to be able to sit down and have dialogue, disagreements, or whatever, has been therapeutic. And I just encourage those who are listening, all of us, to just be impactful, whether your political affiliations are with, or whether you believe this and that and the other. For me, it was trying to do something constructive with, like I said, the anger and the frustration I felt. And so it's good to talk about it, but also be proactive in some kind of way, whatever makes you kind of exert that energy you have based on this issue, because we all need to be under the same umbrella in regards to making a move and trying to change society for the better.
Thank you, Dr. Shear. And thank you for being here tonight, and appreciate the collateral, the investment, the knowledge and wisdom that you've shared and added to the conversation tonight. Brother Greg.
Man, so we have a saying at Hill Charlotte, is if everybody does a little bit, no one would have to do a lot. And I really want everyone to understand that you have a lot of zeal, a lot of passion, a lot of purpose, integrity, build it up. But are you willing to attach yourself to a legacy that's bigger than you? And what little bit have you done to help everyone else do a lot? Self-analyze, self-reflect, and just like the brother was saying, be proactive. Do not be reactive. Find your place in your community and start making a change right there. Start discipling people. Get to know somebody and get to know their testimony, and just do what you were made to do as a child of God, and just get out of the four walls. You have no choice right now because it's COVID-19. And go disciple and go make some friends and do your little bit.
Sure. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you, because your boots on the ground. I'm blessed to see how you have grown to be the man of God, the father, the husband, the son that you've been with our dear precious sister Tammy here. One day we'll tell the story about North Mecklenburg, and I don't know if that was you or your brother, but I know someone. That was Marquise, okay. We will always remember the infamous North Mecklenburg expulsion years ago in the church, but just the fact that your family has been such a staple in the Charlotte, not just black community, but in the Charlotte community. I don't know a lot about Pastor Theo. I've met him once, talked about it. I know he's part of the police force, and so we certainly honor him, and he deserves double honor because he's serving our community as a pastor and as a police officer at Charlotte Police Department. So shout out to him as well. So Elder John Redmond.
Just a parting shot. I made up in my mind that I would never pass a group of young African-American men and not say something to them. Maybe not a long dialogue, but just say something encouraging to them as I'm a firm believer in the word that one planteth, another one watereth, but God gives the increase. I think that time, talk, and touch and mentoring is just taking a man on a tour, and I think that that's needed in our community. But to the men in blue, I pray that they can have a different perspective on our community and not look just for grace for them, but the grave for us. The grace for them, but the grave for us. That mentality has to change. But it's been such a blessing to be here tonight. Thank you.
And I want to say tonight in closing, thank you all for being a part of this Black Men Talk series. We wasn't quite sure how to start it or to finish it, but it's been very, very rich tonight. And I thank these panelists tonight and these men for talking. You all are always welcome to be a part. Next week, we'll continue this on. I think next week we'll look at this conversation from the lenses of the African-American mother. We want to talk to mothers, young and old, from various aspects of our community, how this has impacted them, what their solutions might be, how they pray, what fear goes into their hearts and minds when their son or daughter leaves the house and wondering will they make it back home safely on tonight. Feel free to always send your thoughts, your prayers, your suggestions, your comments, good and bad. We want to make better best. We want to take something that's good and hopefully make it great. We're praying for our community. We love our community. We pray for our leaders from every various level of church, community, government, schools, you name it. At the same time, we can't do this without you. So thank you tonight. Take this broadcast, take this podcast, take this sharing and share it. Send it on, like it, subscribe, whatever it takes to make this go viral. As Dr. Sheard said tonight, this is therapeutic. I think this is part of the healing culture, whether we are boots on the ground with the peaceful protest, whether we're having dialogue. Again, tonight, I'm Dr. Michael Anthony Stevens. The question has been asked, where is the church? Where is the church in all of what our eyes behold? I want you to know the church is here. And I believe that the church can not only take the lead, but we can serve and love and show mercy and compassion. And as Brother Jackson said tonight, we want to show the love of Jesus. We want to be the embodied, incarnate presence of Christ. So when the church shows up, Christ shows up. As Elder Redmond said tonight, I believe it's highly important that we minister and share and lead and show love. With that being said tonight, I want to say good evening, I want to say God bless, and want to say thank you for joining on this evening. Thank you, man. God bless you all.